Welcome to Free Them All, how we are living into the call to free folks in the context of COVID-19 and beyond. This is a few people from our Free Them All campaign that's been going on for a while. And I wanted to just mention that this is part of the AFSC Corporation program, which is running from last night through Thursday night. And I'm going to put the link in the chat, which probably all of you have seen. But if you want to register for any of the other events or look and see what else is there, please feel free to do that. So we're going to get started. And we're going to start tonight with a welcome from India Porter, who is incarcerated. And Demetrius works with her and knows her. She's going to offer a welcome to you all. I'm going to start with that.
Hello, my name is India Porter, and I'm currently incarcerated at Women's Huron Valley in Ypsilanti. I've been incarcerated for almost 19 years now, and I have known of American Friends Service Committee since I first came into the Michigan Department of Corrections. And American Friends Service Committee has always been what I would call people serving time in the Department of Corrections, probably their first response team. It was brought to my attention that if you have an issue, American Friends Service Committee was the people to call because they were our biggest advocates being incarcerated. I began having personal interactions with American Friends Service Committee, mainly Natalie Holbrook, probably 10 years ago. As long as I can remember, she has been somebody that was really passionate, and it was just so refreshing and just a safe feeling to know that there was somebody outside of my family and friends that saw us as humans, as individuals, as people, and they have always been there to give us a voice. I take this privilege to be able to speak on behalf of them with great honor because as long as I've known them and all my interactions with them, I consider them my family because I can sleep well at night knowing that I have people like Natalie and people like Demetrius advocating for me. And my experience with them, they take my freedom and my rights and just my well-being as serious as I would. So I'm just really grateful and thankful for everything that they do for us in here. It's so much that has happened and so much that has not happened because of them, and it's been all to our benefit. And I just can't even imagine what would happen if we did not have American Friends Service Committee advocating for us. So I just want to thank everybody who contributes to make what they do possible. And I also want to thank them, as I always do, for just always being available. They have honestly been my saving grace and just giving me so much hope. I have so many stories that I could tell where American Friends is at the forefront of it. So I'm extremely grateful, thankful, and appreciative for everything that they do for us here.
Thanks. We wanted to just start with the reality of somebody that is a part of our program work as we begin this time. And I'm going to pass it over to Layne and Demetrius and Adriana to introduce themselves, and we'll get into the program. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Layne Mullett. I'm the Media Relations Director here at AFSC, and I'm also a lifelong anti-prison activist locally here in Philadelphia and in the state of Pennsylvania. Been doing this work for many years, and I've been involved in starting Decarcerate PA and the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration, and been active working with people inside and outside of prison to try and build a world where people aren't kept in cages and where everyone has the things they need to thrive. And I really appreciate seeing all of you here and having this opportunity to talk with you tonight.
Okay, I guess that's my cue. Hello, everyone. My name is Demetrius Titus, and I am with the Michigan Criminal Justice Program. Today marks my 6 years with AFSC. I actually did not know it until my LinkedIn said, hey, congratulations, it's been 6 years today. So today marks my 6 years. A little bit about myself. I am formerly incarcerated. I spent 18 years in Michigan Department of Corrections. I was sentenced as a first-time offender to a nonviolent drug charge to a 3 natural life term. Yes, it's very excessive, but unfortunately, because of the oppressive system that we operate under, there were mandates that was in place that actually had me to be sentenced to that much time. However, after about 17 years of incarceration, I was able to file a commutation. The parole board saw merit to it. They passed that commutation on to the governor's office. The governor saw merit to it, and I was released. I've been home for 10 years now, and I have just been engaged in this work. This is some amazing work. Although I left and I, started paving my life forward, my heart was still back for the men and the women that were incarcerated, because I understood the oppression, the demoralization, the dehumanization that they face each and every day of their lives. So that was what prompted me to get back involved in this work. And so I love doing this work. I love making a difference. And I hope something that we're able to share with you all move you as well to want to partake of those differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Layne, Demetrius, and Lucy. Hello, everyone. I'm Adriana Jasso. I am calling in from the beautiful city border region of San Diego, Tijuana. I've been with American Friends Service Committee for almost 15 years. Feels like 2 days sometimes, and sometimes it feels like 15 years. It's great to see all of you, and I have participated in the corporation program before in person in Philadelphia. So this is a different way of participating, but we are incredibly appreciative of your time, energy, and focus to bring about the urgency of the work that Free Them All Coordinating Committee has been doing since some time for now, because mainly the situation conditions of COVID and the risk that it has and the impact that it has had in communities. So I look forward to the conversation, and it's great to see all of you. Thank you, Lucy.
And so we're going to start by talking just a little bit about why we're here and why we're talking about Free Them All. Because I know that a lot of people have a lot of really good questions about what we mean when we say Free Them All, what this campaign's all about, and where it came from, and I guess most importantly, where we're going. So sort of in brief, and this could be hours and hours of a conversation in itself, but I'll try to keep it short because there's a lot of great stuff we want to get to tonight. But the Free Them All campaign is a national effort to release people from prisons, jails, and detention centers. In mid-March of last year, shortly after the pandemic shutdowns began, people from across the country, from many different organizations and communities, started holding digital actions, car caravans, and socially distant protests to demand that people be released from incarceration during the pandemic. I imagine many of you on this call perhaps participated in some way, whether that was being out in the streets or signing petitions or tuning in or just talking to your friends and family about what was going on. Because we all know it's not possible to socially distance in prison. We know that the medical care is inadequate at best, and that both medical supplies and accurate public health information are hard to come by. And last March, when we began mobilizing, we were all really scared for our loved ones and for everyone who was behind bars. And unfortunately, a year later, we know that those fears were really warranted, as we've seen both people in prisons, jails, and detention centers both contract COVID at far higher rates than the general public, and once they have the virus, they're far more likely to die from it because of the medical care the lack of medical care that they receive. And that's not because of anything they're doing. Everyone I talk to in prison has been doing everything that they can to make do with the small amounts of sanitation supplies or masks that they can get their hands on. These are structural issues that are causing people to be more susceptible to get sick and die from the virus. As I'm sure you all know, AFSC has been working to end systems of incarceration for many decades, and our programs across the country played key roles in building this movement in this time of crisis. Both in March and of course back for many years since the 70s, AFSC has been engaging in anti-prison work. We've been, and as well, many decades of history doing the immigration work and mobilizing against immigration detention and other sort of punitive forms of carceral control. We've been mobilizing alongside people in prisons and detention centers and their loved ones to say that no one deserves to die in a cage, not during a pandemic and not ever. And we've had some real successes. We've helped craft legislation and engage in public pressure campaigns that have directly led to the release of incarcerated people. And we've supported people in their individual and collective struggles to get access to the things they need to keep themselves safe while inside. But the Free Them All campaign is about much more than just the dangers posed by the pandemic, because we also know from decades of experience that locking people up doesn't make us any safer. In fact, we really believe that it makes us less safe, that it perpetuates cycles of harm and violence and poverty and directs, the US spends around $80 billion a year on incarceration. Those are resources that aren't going to schools, that aren't going to job creation, that aren't going to a Green New Deal, that aren't going to mental health treatment, that aren't going to drug addiction treatment, and that aren't going to the many, many things that would actually address root causes of harm and violence. We like to say that if incarceration did keep people safe, the US would be the safest place in the world because we have the highest incarceration rate in the world by far. Instead, we have incredibly high rates of gun violence and sexual assault, poverty, precarity, and underfunded social services, while we're warehousing 2.3 million people in cages, disproportionately people of color and poor people, and not doing very much at all to actually support people who are victims or survivors of violence or harm, not giving people the resources they need to heal when they've suffered really real and damaging things at the hands of others. So we know that there's a huge problem, and we know that we need a new system, one that centers accountability and healing. We need ways of addressing harm where the person who has experienced violence is given the resources they need to heal emotionally and physically, that communities are given the resources they need to heal emotionally and physically, because we know that nothing happens in a vacuum, that these things are systemic, and that what impacts one person is going to impact everyone around them. We know we need systems that where the person who actually perpetrated an act of harm is held accountable and is able to make amends rather than just cast aside and held in a cage. And we need to make sure that everyone in the process, both survivors and perpetrators of harm or violence, and the communities that people come from, that we all come from, that the root causes of what's happening are addressed rather than exacerbated. And of course, we need immigration systems that, rather than criminalizing people, are welcoming and supportive to people who are moving from one place to another for any reason. So obviously there's a huge undertaking, one that's questioning the very foundations of the current system, and many of our deeply held, whether we're aware of them or not, beliefs about what justice is, how change happens, and kind of what we're here to do and what we can do in small or even large groups of people up against a really entrenched system. So we're not here to minimize that at all, because we know that there's way more questions than answers about what we're describing in this world we're trying to build. But one thing we know for sure is that what's happening now is not working, and that we need to build something new. And the good news is that we are not starting that process from scratch. So many people on both sides of prison walls, including many of you in this room, and the folks that I feel very lucky to be leading this discussion with tonight, have been visioning and working to decarcerate prison jails and detention centers very hard for the last year and for, in some cases, for the last many decades, and to actually build those systems of justice that serve our communities and can create communities and ultimately whole societies where people have the things that they need to thrive and have the tools to constructively address harm when it happens. And the experiments with how to do that are happening in big and small ways in cities, in rural areas, and in many places behind the walls of prisons, jails, and detention centers all the time, all around us. And here at AFSC, we're super honored to be a part of this movement and to be a part of this work. So that's sort of a lot of the big picture view for me, but I'm sure that everyone's wondering, okay, what does that actually mean? What does that look like? So I'm going to pass it over, I think, first to Demetrius and then to Adriana to talk a little bit about what AFSC's work looks like in the places that they're at. And hopefully that will give you just a little taste of some of the things that AFSC programs are working on all across the country to try to be part of building these new systems of justice and to getting as many people out of prisons, jails, and detention centers as possible to bring people home. So thank you.
Thank you, Layne, for such an amazing introduction. Wow, that was a mouthful, to say the least, but truly, truly appreciate it. I just want to be clear and transparent. Because of my experience and because of the work that I've been engaged with here in Michigan, I do get a little animate and I get extremely emotional because I'm well connected to this work. Reason being is during my time of incarceration, I met so many amazing individuals that I knew if given the second opportunity, if given the second chance, they would thrive. They would bring so much to the communities. So, you know, it's just more than work for me. It's my life. And it is something that I cannot easily walk away from. So with that being said, I just wanted to give you guys forewarning. So with that being said, here in Michigan, we concentrate a lot of our efforts towards what's going on in the prison systems. We work with the men and women who are currently incarcerated in Michigan and we're working with them as they are navigating through the systems. We work with things such as parole. We work with things such as harassment. We work with issues that they deal with property, with the grievance process. And what we actually do here in Michigan is we help them to help themselves. We actually create the space and the opportunity for them to utilize policy and procedures in order to alleviate the situations and circumstances that they sometimes find themselves in. From my personal experience, being incarcerated is a very difficult space to exist in. And the reason being is because of the fact that you're existing in an environment that is very hostile, an environment that is very demoralizing to you, because Michigan Department of Corrections or departments of corrections all over, their ideas and their concepts is if we can strip an individual of their identity, then they can be easily controlled. So these are some of the undertakings that many incarcerated men and women face. We do have a video that showcases some of the work that we do. And to give a quick introduction to that video, some years back, we actually had a campaign. We launched a campaign that gave reference towards we were seeking commutations for the governor. And if you're not sure what that word commutation means, it's just a reprieve from sentence. It's a little bit different than a pardon. When you're talking about a pardon is complete exoneration, but a commutation is relief from judgment, which means that the person accepts full responsibilities for their acts, but they can be integrated back into society, or they have been deemed to be able to enter back into society without incident. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and show you this video, which showcases the work that we do here in Michigan. And the video is entitled Changing the Narrative, the Case for Commutations in Michigan. Also, if you do go to YouTube and look up this video and pull up the video, it will pull up every single person's video, every single person who was a part of this videos, their entire interview. Because of time's sake, it's 11-minute video. Because of time's sake, we were only able to take portions of their interview. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and present this to you.
My name is Natalie Holbrook, and I'm the Program Director for the American Friends Service Committee's Michigan Criminal Justice Program. We are trying to create a unified voice of people who did long time in Michigan's prisons. The group of 7 folks that were here today collectively served 169 years in prison, and there are thousands of people who are left behind still. Our hope is the governor will grant more commutations, and the next governor will grant more commutations, and we will get men and women out who have no other hope but the commutation powers of the governor and/or the parole board paroling more parolable lifers. So we want a different sort of discourse out here. We believe in redemption. We believe that people don't need to be punished for the rest of their lives. We think that people are able to have second chances and do well in community, and people doing the longest time have done the hardest work in the harshest of circumstances in prisons and are able to come back here and be upstanding citizens.
Got bored with school and became more interested in being one of the cool guys in the school and attracting all the sorts of negative attention that kids like to do. And found a couple other people who had the same interests in me, and we became troublemakers.
Although I started off and I graduated from high school and at 17 and I was in college, it seemed like after the loss of my mother, I just kind of lost my way. At that time, I really had no direction. I had no understanding of the consequences of my actions. And so I got caught deep into the street life. I got caught deep into the game.
You resolve conflict through violence and aggression. As a youth, as a 16-year-old, 22, 23, you're battling internal kind of challenges, discovery of who you are, self-image, self-efficacy.
My mom and dad had been married about 25, 26 years at this time. My mom shot and killed my dad in the marital home in front of my 2 younger brothers and sisters. That was July 25th, 1980. And you can see the trajectory of my life spiral up from there. Because July 25th, 1986, I walked into prison on the exact same day of my father's death.
I believe that it's important for other men to be given a second chance, whether they've served 10 years or 40 years. Because everyone, has the ability to want to do good, and they have the ability to be able to do good. I think that we need to reach them inside prison before they are released and help them with their transformation if they're struggling. And as they come out here, be able to provide them the assistance that they need, a safe environment.
Over-incarceration serves no one. There's a point in every sentence, there's a point where any longer time just causes more trauma. And quite frankly, it's my experience that women who go to prison cannot heal in a prison environment because you're in the fight or flight zone your entire incarceration. And you can't begin the healing process when you're walking around like that. You're trying to survive. In order to heal, you have to feel safe and protected.
I made it my point to not fight so much for myself, It's like Mario said, beating down the door for myself. I started trying to beat down the door for others. Because I started looking around me and I saw the injustice and inhumanity of prison. I saw the trauma that prison inflicts on people as a system. And I dedicated myself at that time to change it. I was so determined to make a change that I advocated for the 14-year-old child to be treated as a juvenile, because I saw what prison did to people. And I didn't wish prison on my worst enemy. I didn't wish prison on the guy that killed my son. I did not wish prison on him.
Once I hit a point in my life where I reflected on my violent behavior, abusiveness towards others, and that I never wanted to be treated like that in the first place. I began to reflect why I treated other people that way, and that was my turning point to change the way that I treated others.
Well, I was kind of depressed until I ran into Mario. That's what really turned my life around. Being around positive, thinking people. And here I am today, a different person. And I'm not going back to prison.
That's right. You live with us.
I've been through hell. I'm on the other side of it, and I'm doing good. So here I am.
Of the people that were here today, I think that we got these stories of that we saw the connectedness and we saw all of the violence that people were exposed to at early ages, the trauma, the family dysfunction. And I think that what was really powerful about this group of people is that they found healing in different ways, but they're also there for one another, to hold one another up. And they are capable of profound amounts of healing from trauma that so many people go through and they don't get the opportunity to heal. The other thing that was really striking to me was this sense of support and love and like people being vulnerable with one another, which like where in the world else does that happen? Like you see grown men crying with one another in a room who are these hardened criminals, not at all, right? Like there's this compassion in them and this ability to relate with one another that's really powerful. And there are thousands of those stories, and we're missing out. We're missing out on the courageous people who actually, I think, foster a different kind of compassion in the midst of those insane obstacles in prison. So people who've done long time and come home, I think, really have a work ethic often, because they've had to cultivate that on their own inside. It's not like it's given to them in prison. And so they come home, some people get a regular construction job and do really, really well at it, or go to a factory and go every day and then put themselves through some sort of vocational school at night. I've seen it again and again. There's also people who go to school, like regular college, and get a bachelor's or go to get their master's because they are driven to do something. But it's resilience. They develop skills around resilience. And now they're pushing themselves through college. They're pushing themselves into jobs where they're making a living for themselves and are determined to do it on their own, but also so more open to asking for help than they might have been 25 or 30 years ago. I just want more folks who are doing long time life sentences, long indeterminate sentences, to be given the opportunity to come home and be contributing citizens and be family members and be neighbors, and so that we can learn from them and so that they're not made invisible behind prison walls.
My first job, when I first got out, I worked at a oil manufacturing company. They made cooking oil and popcorn oil and salad oil and just all, I mean, it was a nasty job. But I was a mechanic before I got to prison, so I started working on cars again. My brother had a little garage in Flint, and so I just started doing brake jobs and tune-ups, and did that for a year till Natalie Holbrook gave me a chance. She gave me an internship. I got enrolled in a fellowship in New York called Just Leadership USA. And I went through it, I graduated, and they offered me a job. So now I'm the alumni associate for the organization. I work coordinating their speaking engagement and job opportunities, any opportunity I can find to amplify and elevate their work.
I started off working outside in the wintertime, part-time in a recycling plant. Minimum wage, and that just wasn't making it. I kept pushing, I kept driving, I kept pushing. I ended up working in a factory as a janitor. I kept pushing, I kept working, and so I started working in hospitalities. I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and I made my way up to becoming an actual account manager. And I continued to drive forward, and I ended up becoming a night manager, an assistant GM of a multi-million-dollar hotel.
I was accepted at the School of Business at Wayne State University, and I graduated in 2016 with a BS in accounting.
Graduated from U of M Flint with a bachelor's degree in political science, and started law school at Wayne State at their part-time evening program, and went through law school in 4 years. Graduated there in April, May 2016. And it was right around when I finished law school that I left American Friends Service Committee and was hired at the State Appellate Defender's Office, which is where I'm employed right now.
I hope that with the changes that are happening in criminal justice reform, that we will focus in on the hardest cases, the cases where great harm was done in community, murder, rape, robbery, armed robbery, the hard stuff, so that we can really shift the conversation on prisons and punishment, and we can actually get people out of the system, all of the people out of the system that need to get out of the system, and create something else to deal with harming community, not this burgeoning prison system.
Thank you all for that. You know, I've literally watched this video probably over 30 times, and I'm still find myself choked up every time I view it, because I reflect on the trauma I experienced, the trauma before incarceration, the trauma during incarceration, and even the trauma that transpires after incarceration. As you can see, that was a recurring theme through all 7 individuals. The fact that they had to face so much trauma. However, as you will see, that there was a force, there was a factor that was implemented that helped them to transform through that trauma. What was that? Simple love. And this is what makes us at AFSC so dedicated to the work. Not only recognizing the need for it, but being able to identify it because of our own personal struggles. Recognizing the need to commit ourselves wholly to creating a change. So when I think about all that is needed, when I think about the true element that is needed in order to make a change, I think about how all we as individuals can love through the oppression. So with that just showcases some of the work that Michigan does. And I hope that you all were able to take something out of that. And so at this time, I would like to pass the proverbial baton over to Adriana.
Thank you, Demetrius. That is a powerful recap of the intensity and the importance of the work of your program. And just to also provide you with a little bit of context, American Friends Service Committee was key to the creation of the U.S.-Mexico border program in the early 70s. So our program also has an extensive history in the Tijuana-San Diego region. Key to a key value or consistent value of our program is the concept of accompaniment to individuals and to community. The value of accompanying community members became somewhat of a challenge when COVID-19 came to our region, precisely because we were requested to work from home. This created a situation that we had to come to terms and understand, well, how do we provide the accompaniment and the consistency of supporting communities in these very challenging times? When the COVID-19 arrived to our region, specific to the reality of the Otay Mesa detention center, that became a pretty quick transfer of priorities and support that detainees at that center were asking for. Keeping in mind that the people detained at the Otay facility are in for as a civil matter of immigration. We want to keep that in mind as we watch the video of Leticia. During the time that Leticia was at the Otay facility, she was taken to the Otay facility in January of 2020. She was released to a degree because of the actions and the advocacy that was taking place outside from our organization and other organizations on the ground. She was released in July of 2020. And through her testimony, she became an organizer inside of the facility and convincing the rest of the females in detention that they needed to write letters to the outside people who were paying attention and who were watching the news and who were demanding for protection for people in detention. If anything, as Demetrius mentioned, and Layne and Lucy, the urgency and the risk of the virus continues to be present and continues to take the lives of many people in detention. California is one of the states that holds the most people in detention because obviously we are one of the most populated states and also a border state with Mexico. But it is important to keep in mind also that the great majority of the detention facilities in California are private corporations that since the early 90s, actually maybe the late 80s, continue to benefit and make a profit from keeping people detained. We're gonna show you now, we'll share a video of Leticia Sierra, who will provide you with a sense of what it was like to survive COVID while in detention, and also how she, the experience that she went through being separated from her family. And so if we want to play that, it's pretty short video. Lucy, please.
Okay, so my name is Leticia. I am 36 years old. I live in San Diego. I've been living in San Diego since I was 6 years old. So about 26 years living here in the US. I have a child. I have one child and he's a boy. He's 11 years old and I live here with my mother, my sister. I was detained at the Otay Detention Center last year from January to July. All the things that happened there. And I'm just scared that I'm gonna be taken away from my family, from my son. And this is what people don't understand. We come into panic. Now we don't know what to expect, what's gonna happen. And we're gonna be taken away. And I'm taking medication, for my therapist. And it's really hard to have a normal life now.
It's clean.
Mm-hmm. And these are the things that people don't know. They're hurting us. These are scars that are never gonna go away. These are the things that is gonna haunt us forever. And not just us, but our kids, our family as well. Yeah, so everyone that was in there, in this unit, it was a violation of immigration. Nobody in there were criminals. Nobody in there has had nothing bad to do. We were just immigrants. That's the reason why we were detained and being held in this jail, because it's not a detention center, it's jail. That's what it is. As much as they want to sugarcoat this, it's jail. you know. And in my room, there was 4 girls that had COVID, in my room. And it was just, it was scary being around them, you know. Because after even quarantine, after they came back, like I said, some of the girls, they were still sick. They were still showing symptoms. They still had fever. And I was telling my mother, like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. These women, we all sleep in the same room. We all, you know, use the same sink. We all use the same microwave. Like, we use everything, you know. We don't have any gloves. And I was like, after I had spoken to her, I was feeling very sick at nighttime, and I told her, like, I had a fever and I had woken up with blisters on my body, and I was just like, Mom, I'm scared. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna catch COVID and die in here. Like, I'm never gonna be able to see you or my son. What am I gonna tell my son? And my son knew about COVID, and he was like, Mom, like, you know, I watched the news, you know, like, you don't have to lie to me anymore. Like, I heard that there's, you know, some women that have the COVID in your unit, you know, and please tell me the truth. And I was like, I don't know what to say to my son, to my mother. And us trying to call organizations and trying to, you know, get help. And it was just, it seemed like we were just helpless, all of us in there. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to leave this place. It would be just me, like, in a bag, you know, leaving this place. And I was like, maybe that's the only way I'm going to be free, in a bag. We heard, like, the whole commotion, like, going on outside, because at that time we had our yard time. So we were outside, and we heard a lot of people, like, honking, you know, and, like, yelling and stuff. And we were like, we didn't know what was going on because we can't see. And my mother told me, she was like, oh no, there's people protesting outside, because I had spoken to her on the phone. The detainees were really happy because they thought, oh my gosh, they're fighting for our rights. They're trying to do something for us, you know? Mm-hmm. And for us, it was a really good feeling knowing that there was people outside trying to help us and try to support us. It made us continue making those calls, reaching out to organizations that were helping us. And it was very inspiring, just knowing that people cared about us immigrants. And it made us stronger and not want to give up, and just fight for our rights, fight for our family, fight to stay here. Mm-hmm. But I just want to say that, like, you guys are just amazing for trying to help us, because it's really hard for all those people that are in there. Life is already tough in there, and just that little hope that you guys give us means the world to us. And it's really, really appreciated, because everyone in there needs some type of support, you know?
So Leticia is with her family, has been with her family, with her child and her mother and her sister, her community. She is a worker. She will continue to fight her case, her immigration case. And we will continue to accompany her to become the voice and the tireless advocate for the freedom of the many other people that continue to be in detention.
Thanks, Demetrius and Adriana. So I feel like those are just a couple examples of really amazing work that AFSC is involved in, using different strategies, right? Different strategies, different facilities, often different targets to achieve the same goal, which is getting people, is working with people inside and outside to bring people home. And I don't know, Demetrius, if you had anything else you wanted to share, if you just want to take us into our activity.
Sure. I mean, just that video in itself was truly moving. You know, just being able to hear into an individual who had been in that situation. It just makes us all reflect. I know I can say for me, it makes me to reflect on the need of AFSC. The need of us positioning ourselves to be those advocates for those who cannot advocate for themselves. The need for us to lift up our voices, to lift up our resources, to do that which is necessary in order to bring some relief to the continual oppression that individuals face in this country. It was truly moving. So with that, at this time, we're going to move this moment into the interactive part of the program. I have to say, this is probably, when we were putting the program together, this was probably my favorite part. We're going to have breakout sessions, and we're going to ask all of you to be visionaries. We're going to ask all of you to stretch your imaginations, to believe beyond belief. We're asking you to carry the idea to make up your own neighborhood where there's no police, there's no prisons or detention centers. What kind of system would you design? We are asking you in this exercise to select a facilitator and a note taker in your group. So I'm going to have Layne at this time to share with you some points, directions, and thoughts to take into your space.
Right. So this is just going to be a little taste of what the work is like, right? We just want to remind everyone that we're asking you to think about a lot of hard questions that don't have clear answers, right? Like, and Lucy, you can see, has just put some of the questions we want you to think about in the chat. So basically, like, so we're not asking you to get together and have a debate about the current system. Like, you've all just been transported somewhere else. And I have to say, this is not as maybe implausible as you might imagine. We actually are in tons of spaces in our lives where, like, for example, I grew up in a super rural area where there basically weren't police. Like, there were state troopers, but they were, because it wasn't very densely populated, they were always really far away, right? So actually, I think that people often have more experience solving problems without police and prisons than you might think. So we're actually asking you to take some of the things you already know, which is a lot of what we shared tonight about the current system. The current system is not working. And we all have experiences and resources to draw on, and dreams, right? Things we haven't experienced yet of how we maybe already do, or how we might deal with conflict, deal with harm and violence, how we teach our children about what justice means and what it doesn't mean. And so we're asking you to get together in some small groups. You've just been dropped into this scenario. You're in a neighborhood together. You can think of your little small group as the town council, or the autonomous administrators of your region, or the facilitators of the General Assembly, or, you know, the legislators, or whatever, however you want to conceptualize yourself. But basically, you're going to be in small groups. You all are going to talk together, start talking through some of these questions about how you're going to work together to address the inevitable conflicts and harms that come up when groups of people get together. And so we're going to ask someone to volunteer to facilitate, and the facilitator's job basically is just to make sure that everyone in the group gets a chance to speak, right? So it's not just like one or two voices dominating the whole conversation, but that, because one thing we know about doing this work is that everyone has a lot to contribute, and the more voices that we can hear and learn from, the better the systems we design are going to be. And then we're going to ask someone to just take some notes so that the whole group can benefit from the wisdom of what you all decided in your neighborhood. And we just want you guys to kind of talk with each other. Imagine you're, at your first community meeting in your neighborhood with no police or prisons. You're going to start thinking, okay, what are we going to do together? And we want to remind you that there's not one right answer to this question, right? And I think that if there's one thing that we want people to actually take away from this idea of free them all, or the idea of getting rid of prisons altogether, carceral systems, is that there's not one replacement. There's not one replacement to what we do now. There are thousands of different things that can happen and many things that need to happen in order for us to shift from relying on these toxic, traumatic, racist systems that we're living in now to build that new world. And that's going to take a lot of really big ideas and a lot of really small ideas and a lot of hard work and a lot of small groups of people coming together to think together and dream together about what's possible. So you don't have to get to all these questions that Lucy just dropped in the chat. These are jumping off points. If it's helpful, you can go through scenario by scenario. If you'd rather kind of just start with a big picture vision of what you want your neighborhood to be like, you can start there. You could even decide that what you're going to do to deal with harm and violence is lock people in the basement if you want to, but you don't have anyone else to call to make that choice. You can't just say, oh, it's already there, send people there. You're going to have to build it. So you can choose what to do. And we're hoping that you'll think about some of the things that we've said and talked about here, about what we see happens when people have the opportunity to work together and grow, and also some of the harms that are caused when we just go right to those punitive solutions. And so we're giving you a chance to think it through. And there's not going to be a test at the end. This is just an exercise to hopefully get people in sort of that creative, open, experimental, and like learning place that we know that we need to be in order to move some of this work forward.
Welcome, everyone. We hope that through your conversations and engagement, you build that alternative community that is needed based on what we share with you as the challenges and the complexities and the pain of the many communities that Demetrius and myself illustrated for you. We would like to hear from you, actually. What were the most powerful, surprising, or challenging aspects of your conversation? Because of time, we don't have enough time to hear from everybody, and we apologize for that. But just for us to get a sense of how profound those conversations and how moving your interactions with the rest of your group were, you can raise your hand if you're ready to share. Keeping in mind, as Layne shared with us as we went into the breakout rooms, that these are very, very difficult questions to deal with, and that they're not. And there's not one answer to the problem, right? If there was, perhaps we would have a different system in place. But let us hear from you. Jonathan, please.
Sure. So I was in group number 4, and a couple of us had actual experience with trying to deal with someone who had committed sexual harms. In our case, it was actually not within the meeting, but within our friends' meeting, we had to set up a committee to manage that, and we did. We actually did. There's an article in Friends Journal about it, addressing sexual offenders. But the challenge came up when we had to deal with like the world outside the community, because these people had not been convicted within the community, but were being sent in from outside. But they're in the scenario we set up, their victim was also in the community. So, of course, in this amount of time, we weren't able to completely set up a mechanism that would work well, but it raised really good issues about how to deal with people who had harmed each other in this really serious way and harmed the entire community as well. So in the case I'm familiar with, we are the committee that was set up to tend to 3 different people or groups of people: the offender, the victim, and the community as a whole.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that. It is not an easy task, even when it's a discussion with that doesn't have the lived experience of a victim, because it is important to recognize that pain and that seek for justice. It is important to keep in mind. Does somebody else want to share? Lori, go ahead.
Our group is group 6. We decided that this is a difficult exercise, as everybody else probably did. We thought the first thing we probably needed to do was just get to know the people in our community. So there was a familiarity, build familiarity and communication among neighbors. And then just make sure people's fundamental needs are met. We thought that we didn't need to reinvent the wheel. We could look around maybe to other countries and look for their best practices through research. We thought we could minimize things like fear, watching a lot of television, having a lot of guns. Those sorts of things seem to always lead to violence. And then just work on overcoming our internal conditionings, the things that keep us from getting involved. We had a couple of people in our group from Minnesota, and they were talking about the Derek Chauvin trial and how so many people were so reluctant to get involved when George Floyd was being harmed, and that so many of us don't really feel very empowered to do that. So that's a major thing that we need to overcome.
Thank you, Lori. We have room for one more. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
I was in group 5, and one of our members had a lot of experience with a restorative justice program that had been developed by Suffolk University in Massachusetts. There is a good deal of information that is available about including historically informed, looking back quite a ways in history, historically informed to what we regard in the 21st century as primitive cultures, restorative processes that could be models for establishing in our community. We felt that individual conflicts could be resolved by mediation by trained facilitators rather than lawsuits or things of that sort. And we did not arrive at answers to the questions: how would we deal with a lack of cooperation on the part of some members of this community in these processes that we wanted to set up? So would those processes be voluntary or mandatory? And if mandatory, how could we enforce compliance in a what we envision as a loving community?
A loving community is what many communities are waiting for, and at this point, I think because we brought you back to the reality and the urgency to free them all, I want to hand it over to Demetrius to leave us with what do we do? What can we do? What are some of the things that are within our capacity and ability in terms of how do we connect? Where do we find those communities that are in the movement process of freeing them all, and also fighting in some cases, case by case, but also in other cases, collectively. So Demetrius, tell us what we are left with and what we need to do.
Thank you, Adriana. Truly appreciate it. You know, as I was listening to all the insight that you all were sharing, and I was reading a concept, I was reading what you were placing in the chat. This is the reason I personally love Quakers. It's just my personal thought that I wanted to share with you all. But as we have been able to occupy this amazing space together, we have been able to share in some very inspiring moments. We have watched, a really moving testimonial. We have heard a story of hope in the midst of living in this oppressive prison industrial complex. We have heard of the outstanding work that is being done in the Free Them All campaign throughout the country. We have also had the opportunity to imagine a world without prisons. So with this in mind, I want to give you just one more thought to carry with you. Today, as of April 6th, there's over 392,595 cases of COVID behind prison walls. And unfortunately, there is 2,515 deaths throughout the country. This number is not including the detention centers and the jails. So here we are at this place with all these amazing concepts, with all of this information. And it is with that information that we can create vision. And with vision comes implementation. It is our hope. It is our deepest desire that we can all in this moment continue to draw on this energy that has been produced in tonight's event. That you, each one of you, as a healer, will answer the call to action. Our nation today is in desperate need of healing. And that healing today, it starts with you. I hope you will join in the movement for Free Them All by joining one of our action events. I think about as Mother Day is upon us, I take thought to the many mothers that are separated from their children and the mothers whose children are living in cells and detention centers. The moms that will be missed sorely because of a system that places dollars and cents over relationship and love. For more information on how you can contribute your time and you can contribute your resources, please go to afsc.org/freethamall to find out how to join us in this amazing cause. In closing, I'm reminded of a passage of scripture that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Let's hold fast to our vision so we can actually and genuinely work towards a better tomorrow. With that, I would like to ask Lucy to close us for tonight.
Thanks, Demetrius. So I put in one of the dates. These will be on the Free Them All page. On May 6th, we're going to have a virtual teach-in. Thank you so much, Demetrius, about Care Not Cages, thinking about mothers and families across the walls and breaking that down. And then we'll have a day of action on the Friday before Mother's Day. So join us for those things. And I want to say that this whole week of the corporation program, this was really wonderful to be with you tonight, hear your imaginal visions. And this week is all about exploring the different aspects of what it would take to create a just society, to create justice beyond the carceral system. We're going to have a workshop on restorative justice. We're going to have a workshop on economic justice. Come and learn with us for the rest of the week. And all of these workshops and presentations will be available as recordings, but we'd love to have you there live. And then on Thursday, Niall Ford is going to close us out with a powerful plenary about abolition. So please join us. And I'd like to invite us to gather in silent worship and to pray for the world that we've imagined today, that we've had a little bit of time to imagine. And then we'll close. Thank you. Thank you so much to Adriana and Layne and Demetrius.